work art. He was found in a place called Murphytown in Abaco and was running loose with a collar and a leash and a fresh haircut. Hello, I'm Mimi, and Ron asked me how I came to Boot Key Harbor, and so I'm about to tell him and tell you. I was born on Long Island, New York, and grew up on the Great South Bay and started sailing when I was 3. Well, when I grew up on Long Island, I was near the water all the time, and so that became a kind of a given. And then went to college and worked on a newspaper and did some graduate school and worked for a museum and did a whole lot of things before I ended up in the Bahamas for 30 years. We can go back to that. And then Hurricane Dorian blew in and changed my whole life and that of many other people. I had been in Treasure Key, Abaco for about close to 30 years. And we'd been through many, many hurricanes. Dorian took us out and took out the project I was working on too, which gave me a reason to be there. And so we ended up here at Boot Key, which is an incredible place, and it's helped me regrow, get my head back on straight, deal with strange things called PTSD and whatnot. And hopefully I'll be able to pick up on my project again. And while I was in college, I studied philosophy and then had a number of jobs that could have been turned into careers, but some of them never appealed. I wrote for a newspaper for 3 years, and then the newspaper folded because it was making a profit. I've done clothing design and all sorts of things like that. And mostly writing. I did a lot of freelance writing, one article in National Fisherman, which was really kind of interesting. And then I worked for Planet Ocean Museum in Miami, Florida for 9 years. And it turned out that job was going to end. I was getting a little restless, but I wasn't ready to go, but they did me a favor. And I said, okay, I'm going to go to the Bahamas, where I had been once very briefly, but I had to leave that trip. So now was my chance to go to the Bahamas. So I read the Yachtsman's Guide and all the other appropriate things to go back to the Abacos. And there was a line in the guide that said, and on the island there are herds of wild horses.
Once, they were a mighty herd, perhaps 200 strong. Pinto, bay, black, and roan horses, rippling through thousands of acres of pine forest. They were as free as the sea winds that blew across the island they had conquered.
Now, one child, and certainly a lot of boy kids, have dreamt about finding an island with wild horses on it that needed help. And I read every horse novel that I could as a kid, and I thought my heart was going to stop beating. And I said, okay, I'm going to the Bahamas and I'm going to find the horses and see what's going on. And that's what I did. When I got to Abaco, it took me several weeks before I made a connection that helped me find the horses. And I saw them for the first time, and I nearly lost the camera. Couldn't hang on, I was shaking. And then I realized that I'm not a horse expert, but there was something special about them, the way they were built and the way they looked and the way they acted. And sure enough, over the next 30 years, I began to realize what we had there, which was an offshoot of the horses that came out of Spain to Cuba, and Cuba sent the Spanish colonial horses all over North and South America. And they were like jeeps. They carried the whole Spanish army. And so it took a while to prove that these horses were the same horses because they'd been brought in to haul logs while the forests were clear cut. And then the horses were turned loose after people switched to tractors. But they survived. Nobody expected them to. And they turned into an amazing herd of 200 animals that were of a lineage that are the ancestors of every Mustang. Well, not now every Mustang, but the original Mustangs. Pasafinos, over probably close to a dozen breeds of horses, all descended from these same animals. Working with the Bahamian government to get a safe place for them, which we did. We had a nice preserve set up, and we had many activities going, people visiting them and finding out about their history and about the history of something about the land in the Bahamas and the incredibility of fresh water being under some of the islands. It just went on, and it was totally fascinating storing all that data. And fortunately, I had it on my computer because when Dorian hit and wiped out the entire preserve and the whole project and took many people's lives, right where I was, I had it, and I kept that computer safe, and so I've still got all the data and all the information. And so now as we try to rebuild the project again, because over the years I collected a lot of information on DNA and cloning, and we can clone the horses back to reality even though they're gone and extinct. And this may well be the first time this has ever been possible, because attempts have been made before to clone, and they've been successful, but they haven't been of animals that are already extinct and gone, just brought back from living tissue that we saved on the day the last horse died.
Before the horses went extinct, Mimi founded a non-profit organization known as Ark Wild. She also founded a non-government organization known as the Wild Horses of Abaco. Mimi is currently 81 years old and passionate as ever to bring these wild horses of Abaco back into existence. The footage you see now is Mimi with the last remaining wild horses of Abaco, just before they went extinct. This film only scratches the surface of Mimi's fascinating and interesting life.